Good evening, everyone, and welcome to AZ Illustrated Nature. I'm Georgia Davis. Tonight we'll continue our special week-long series about getting by, living between the poverty lines in Pima County. Learn about economic challenges facing local residents and see how various environmental programs are trying to make a difference. But first, here's a look at today's headlines.
The Pima Animal Care Center is experiencing an overflow of cats and dogs, and officials are asking for help. On July 1st, there were 751 pets at the Pima Animal Care Center. There are less than 330 kennels and cages, so that means multiple dogs and cats have to share small spaces. Many dogs have special needs or don't get along with other dogs, so they have to be kept alone in a kennel, forcing even more dogs to be kept in a cage, raising the stress and illness levels. Despite being over capacity, no animal will be turned away. Meanwhile, late this afternoon, the shelter closed due to the death of a Department of Corrections inmate working at the shelter. The Department of Corrections is investigating that incident. All the recent rain is bringing a change to the Coronado National Forest. As of this weekend, the forest is lifting fire restrictions. Even though the rain has soaked the forest and the fire restrictions are going away, rangers still want visitors to be careful with fire, making sure campfires stay in campfire rings and also ensuring that fires are completely out before people leave. Other federal parkland, including the Bureau of Land Management, is also lifting fire restrictions. And the Housing and Urban Development Office in Tucson is closing, along with 15 other agency field offices across the country. The agency estimates it will save more than $100 million during the next 10 years by closing those facilities. The Tucson office has 6 employees. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
In January of 2014, the nation will mark 50 years since President Johnson declared the war on poverty in the United States. Yet the Tucson area continues to struggle. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Tucson is the 6th poorest large city in the country, and about 1 in 5 local residents live below the poverty line. Tonight, we continue our week-long series, Getting By, and we bring you an environmental angle. The Sierra Club's Inner City Outings is a program that works with low-income teenagers and other demographic groups so they can get closer to the natural world around them. We have 3 guests to tell us more about why this matters. Andrew Jenkins is a trip leader with Sierra Club's Inner City Outings. He is also development coordinator with International Rescue Committee. Priyash Sangrala is a participant in Inner City Outings, and so is Asha Adam. Thank you to all 3 of you for coming in today.
Nice to be here.
So let's start with you. Let's talk about Inner City Outings. So what is this organization?
Well, Inner City Outings, or ICO, is a volunteer-run extension of the Sierra Club. And the ICO has chapters in 50 U.S. cities across the country. And the goal and the mission of ICO is simple. We want to get as many kids outside into nature as possible. And by doing that, it teaches them to appreciate, explore, and protect their natural environment. And we do that by partnering with existing school groups and youth programs and leading guided field trips to beautiful locations and sometimes even wild locations that the students would never be able to access on their own. And for most of these students, it's the first time they've ever gone to these locations, and especially those from lower income or urban environments. And what we see and the changes we see in the students we take out is incredible.
So Asha, you go to Amphi, correct?
Yeah, I go to Amphi High School.
And you're a senior?
Yes, I'm a senior.
So where have you gone with Inner City Outings?
I've gone to Mount Lemoore and to the zoo.
And are these places you had been before?
No.
And how long have you been in Tucson?
10 months.
10 months, okay. And you've been involved with Inner City Outings this whole time?
Yes.
Okay. And then Prayash, how about you? So where are some of the places that you've gone?
Well, I've gone to part of Northern California, Mount Lemmon, Picacho Peak, and I don't remember one other place.
Okay, but you've traveled pretty far.
Yeah.
So, and are any of these places that you had been before on your own?
No.
Really? Okay. No. So give me a little bit of history, if you will, to this organization.
Well, Sierra Club has been in existence for a long time, but back, I believe, in the 1975, I think, San Francisco already had a chapter of inner city outings. And what they wanted to do, Sierra Club was really wanting a way to reach out into the schools and impact the youth that were growing up. And they saw a divide beginning to connect already at that time of students being more sedentary in the homes, not getting out. And so they were reaching into schools and saying, let's connect, let's get those kids out into the environment so they can learn to protect the environment. And it's kept growing since then. In Tucson, at least, last year we led 79 trips, individual trips, for over about 450 students on our trips.
Okay, so it's really starting with a kind of environmental message and raising consciousness and awareness, but you're working particularly with the you're part of the International Rescue Committee, but of course Inner City Outings is working with the IRC, and with a lot of kids who don't have a lot of money, who may not be able to do this anyway. So tell me about this kind of transition into working with kids that face some challenges.
When I first arrived in Tucson about 4 years ago, I started looking for ways I could volunteer and connect my passion for students and outdoor education. And I found Sierra Club Inner City Outing. So I started to volunteer and participate on trips that they were doing with other groups. And then I was on staff at the International Rescue Committee at that time. And when we formed the Refugee Youth Coalition, which is part of the IRC, that gave me the chance to sort of merge two things together. And so I began leading trips for those refugee high schoolers. And we'll do 2 or 3 trips a year, focused on team building. The Refugee Youth Coalition will meet bi-weekly, but I'm not involved. ICO will sort of sweep in and then take them on team building activities or up on mountains, into caves, exploring all over the place.
Oh, that sounds like fun. So, Priyash, well, tell me a little bit about your background and how long you've been in Tucson, where you're from.
Well, I was born in Nepal. I was there for like 8 to 13 years. My dad was there for 19 years or so. I came to America with the help of our IRC, and I've been here for 4.5 years. It's way better.
I imagine so. Well, and you were in a refugee camp, correct, before you came here?
Yeah.
And what was that like?
It was pretty horrible. No electricity. It was like water. You have to stay in line to get water. And school, like they were made out of kind of like wood, so it would leak. If there was rain, you have to go home. So not much left, like studying or learning.
Wow, it's hard to even imagine for those of us who've grown up here what that would be like even. So, but of course you've got big plans, right, for your future. Can you tell me about them?
Yeah, I want to be a computer engineer or an auto tech engineer. I don't know which career to go yet, but I'll probably be 2 of them, or I don't know yet.
Yeah, you've got some time to figure it out, right? So, and how about you, Asha?
Yeah, I'm from Sudan. I was born in Sudan, West Sudan, and I came to Kenya refugee camp for 8 years. Yeah.
And how long have you been? You said 10 months here?
10 months in Tucson. Yeah.
And so tell me what that has been like, that transition between your past life and now.
Yeah, now at least it's better than the life before in refugee camp, because life in refugee is hard. Yeah, it's very hard.
Absolutely. And what are your plans for your future? Here you've got some too.
Yeah, I plan to be a pilot. Yeah, because I want to travel to see different countries, and I need to help, especially refugee, because I have been refugee for 8 years, and then the life is hard. That's why I want to help, especially children in a refugee camp. They don't study because they don't think that they can study because it's hard. Yeah.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Well, and of course, I'm assuming now you've got some opportunities that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
So, well, one of the things, of course, that you've done with Inner City Outings is get out and explore the desert here. So how different is that from the places where you've come from? How about you, Asha?
Yeah, it's different because there back, we don't go to hikings, we don't go to visit the zoo because it's dangerous. But here we are a lot, and we have to go to hiking to see. It's a lot of fun.
I agree. I very much agree. Prayash?
Well, in Nepal there are like forests. We just used to go in them. It was kind of dangerous, but like over here I haven't been in like the forest for like 4 years or so. That's when like Andy dropped in and we started going hiking outside, and it's been pretty fun. It's like working with him and having fun.
Yeah. Well, so Andrew, of course, something we've talked about in some of our past shows is just how important it is for kids to get away from the computers and the technology and actually get outdoors. So what has been your experience with that?
Well, before anyone can ever learn to protect the environment, they have to be connected to it or feel a sense of ownership. And statistics are showing that the average student spends 7.5 hours a day now in front of a screen. And that can be valuable time, but it's not the full reality. And so at ICO, what we're trying to do is, with refugee groups and others, schools across Tucson and other youth programs, we partner with them and we seek to turn their gaze to the outside world, to the real world. And when they do that, there's a dramatic expansion and they have no idea what they've been missing. And so the greatest joys I have is when we're up on a trail on Mount Lemmon and the students are just running along the trail, pointing at everything they see like they're discovering it for the first time. Like, look at this, a bug, a bird, a sight, a smell, a sound, and they're so excited. And then sitting them down and showing them how everything is connected, that trickle of water is part of a basin, which is part of a mountain range, which affects the weather where they live in Tucson. And then they're connected and they really feel like this is their home, and then they begin to think and protect. And the best part is they're active. They're learning, they're physically moving, which is not only healthy, but they'll remember it better. It becomes part of who they are.
Right, and unfortunately we're almost out of time, but one point I want to hit on, so this isn't just, of course, helping refugee communities and kids who are coming from low-income families. And this is something that all kids can benefit from,
Totally.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of the things I've heard is kids who grow up in front of computers get used to them being kind of the center of their world because they're created around them, whereas if you're out in nature, you realize that you're not the center of that world.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, is that an experience you've seen?
Oh, totally. What I've enjoyed, one experience I can think of as a girl came, when we started the trip, she was so afraid of everything, terrified because she had never touched, grass and dirt and cacti. And so as we hiked, she gradually separated from the leader and then was now running in front of the group and then scared me, ran up, opened her hand right in front of my face and there was a bug in it and scared me. And she was like, a bug. And I was like, oh, look at you. That's amazing. And the transformation in that 1 hour period of time. Yeah. So we're always looking for more people who can partner with us as volunteers to make more experiences like that happen. Or the trips we're really efficient with our time and our money, but we're looking for partners as well.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you, all of you, for coming in and talking to us about this.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to inner-city outings, there are other groups and organizations familiar with the benefits of exploring the great outdoors, and they say it's imperative these opportunities be given to more young people. In our next story, we take you to a scenic scene southeast of Tucson, where kids are getting their hands dirty and gaining valuable knowledge along the way. Tony Paniagua and photojournalist Bob Lindbergh have the story.
These expansive spaces in southeast Arizona are helping to open minds and opportunities for those who inhabit the cities nearby.
Yeah, my school does some stuff, but I hadn't really been doing a lot of stuff by myself. And it's really nice that this program is here because it helps me do more.
It's a natural classroom in the great outdoors, and the students are adolescents who are learning about its bounty and biodiversity.
I thought it sounded like an amazing opportunity to come out here and work with all these plants and grasses and all these beautiful grasslands and wetlands out here and try and preserve them.
The students are taking part in a cooperative program that is organized by the Ironwood Tree Experience and other agencies.
And remember that we need great details to remind us or to prompt us next time we're here.
The Ironwood Tree Experience was established by Prescott College in 2005 with a message of taking kids outdoors and engaging them with the natural world around them.
And the programs have progressed in that we do work with kids and get them active with rock climbing and hiking and backpacking, but to also provide a little bit more substance. A lot of colleagues that we work with at Cienega Watershed, BLM, the Forest Service, National Park Service, a lot of these organizations want to see teens in particularly get involved in some meaningful projects.
And this is one example. It's happening at La Cienegas National Conservation Area, which is operated by the Bureau of Land Management. Inside this protective fence, scientists and their student assistants are trying to restore a native ecosystem, an aquatic oasis in the desert that is fighting invasive species such as bullfrogs and non-native plants. Jim Roraba is a retired fish and wildlife biologist, and he's providing his expertise for the project.
This is part of the recovery program for the endangered Huachuca water umbel, which is a pretty nondescript, very small plant that lives in wetlands like this, in very shallow water or saturated soils.
As students are literally finding out with laughter and photo opportunities when they get into sticky situations while trying to maneuver the saturated soils.
It's not that I don't like dirt, it's that I don't like being stuck. All the students probably got stuck today, except maybe the really soft-footed ones. That's probably that very word.
But laughter aside, they come here for the serious task of preparing suitable spots for new transplants, which will hopefully take root and multiply inside the protected area. The pond and its inhabitants are surrounded by cattle and other creatures that would make the natives' long-term prospects much more difficult if it weren't for the assistance.
It engages them in making decisions about their future and their backyard. Most of our kids are from Vail, half of them are from in town, but this area is so critical to all of us because it's one of our last wetlands. So instead of just having them come out here and identify species, they're actively trying to restore and protect this area.
And it's a great perk for students like Shelby Link and Luca Valente. Both are planning their futures in the wake of their high school graduations. They say this 8-week summer program is a natural progression in their lives.
I have always enjoyed this kind of work, but this is kind of my first experience in the field in doing something on this scale, working with like endangered plants and for a larger cause.
What have been your favorite parts so far?
Oh, my favorite part. Well, just today we were driving up and we saw pronghorn antelope, and we saw a baby pronghorn antelope, and that is not common. It was very cool, very cool.
We really have an understanding that all kids need to be outdoors. So yes, we do have inner city kids, challenged kids, or maybe lower socioeconomic kids that don't have opportunities. So regardless of their economic background, there should be some really quality programs out there. And Youth Engaged Stewardship really offers that opportunity.
We have 50 in total that we have to dig. So I think we're more than halfway done. I think it's a great opportunity because we don't pay for this experience, and a lot of kids don't have the ability to do what we're doing right now, or even know about the option that this is. So I think that if kids were involved with this kind of work, that there'd be more success stories and more projects happening, because the interest is probably there, but people don't know about it.
There is a stipend at the end of this, but together as a whole, we decide how much we will give back to this kind of program, as you will. So, yeah. And some of it will go to us, or all of it will go to the program, or all of it will go to us. We decide together.
It's this real experience. It's empowerment to actually do it. They come out here with a total feeling that they have achieved. Part of this program is they form a youth board, and they're making decisions on what actions are actually taking place. So they're given a budget, they make the decisions, they come up and decide how they're going to enact it and do the restoration work. There's not adults, we're all on the sidelines kind of helping in a way and guiding, but definitely it's student-driven.
So there are benefits for the students, for the community as a whole, and the environment which we all share. The students say the memories they obtain here will follow them for a lifetime, allowing for reflection and inspiration to participate in future endeavors, whether as individuals or groups. And even though many of us have never heard of the Huachuca water umbel, these kids can now describe it and give you a better understanding of how it fits into our Sonoran desert region.
Lawmakers clashed with national security officials today and threatened to curtail surveillance programs revealed by former defense contractor Edward Snowden.
We bring you the latest on the Snowden saga and a debate about whether his actions were justified between Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers, and former Attorney General Michael Mukasey.
Then we examine some good news about dementia, as 2 studies in Europe show plummeting rates of disease and sharper minds among the elderly.
Judy Woodruff looks at the bitter standoff between Walmart and Washington, D.C.'s City Council, part of a widening fight over paying workers a living wage.
From the Asian nation of Myanmar, Kira Kay has the story of land grabs as government authorities seize property long tilled by farmers.
And Wyoming politics takes center stage as Liz Cheney, daughter of the former vice president, decides to challenge a sitting Republican senator.
And that's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
China reached its modern economic power after almost 2 centuries of trying to recover the glory of its ancient empire.
This theme keeps reappearing, this fixation on restoration of Chinese greatness, that period when China was the center of everything.
I'm Renee Montaigne, The China Dream, on the next morning edition from NPR News.
It's been 3 years since BP was able to cap its massive oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, and many scientists and other experts continue to study the environmental, social, and financial impacts of this massive ecological disaster. One of those professionals is a regular visitor to that region from his home in Tucson, and tonight he's here to tell us about his studies. Dr. Brian Mayer is an environmental sociologist who specializes in community and environmental health, and he's an associate professor in the School of Sociology at the University of Arizona. So thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you're doing a lot of work. This is an area I spent a lot of time in before I came here, and you've spent a lot of time in these areas too. So can you tell me a little bit about how they've changed kind of pre and post this oil spill?
This is a really interesting area, and it's one that I've also come to fall in love with during my time there. One of the key ideas that we're working with is that of resiliency, and I think that term really encapsulates this area very well, because this is an area of the country that's remote. Most of these places on the Gulf Coast are far away from any major population centers, especially where we're working in the Florida Panhandle, which is often called the Forgotten Coast for good reason. It was forgotten about on a map once, which is why they call it that. And so these are places that have held on to a number of dying industries. Sponging, for example. Cedar Pencils is the name of Cedar Key, which is one of the field sites where we're looking at. And so their industries are very much dependent on two things, on seafood and tourism. And both of those were very much devastated by the spill. As we're looking and following the damages of the spill on these coastal communities, some of those industries are coming back. Tourism, for example, has bounced back to pre-spill levels, but that's somewhat artificially supported. BP has spent millions of dollars to advertise to the Gulf. And most of us have probably seen, if we turn on the television sometime in 2010 or 2011, come on down to the Gulf, it's safe. And so people have been coming back. In one of our areas in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, which is in Alabama, their numbers are up pre-2009 levels, which has been quite amazing. But the seafood industry is yet to bounce back. They're still struggling to recover.
Well, and when I was there, I talked to a lot of people who lived in those communities right along the shore. I mean, they're sitting on prime real estate in Florida, beachfront real estate. And a lot of them, when I left 7 years ago, were feeling like they were already under attack from industries and developers and people who could make a profit on that property. So how did the oil spill affect those communities in that sense?
The oil spill has been something of a double whammy to these communities, already experiencing the effects of the housing downturn, which has really quashed any plans to develop Florida's Forgotten Coast. You can drive through there and see abandoned lots. You can see roads built with pipes and just empty lots where homes were planned to be built, but they're not. And so these places were already reeling from that recession, and when the spill hit, all of a sudden hotels weren't filling. Seafood couldn't fish because the Gulf was closed in a lot of regions, and even once those closures were lifted, they simply couldn't find the fish or the shrimp or the other catch. And so they've been hit by two simultaneous economic impacts, which was very threatening at that time. As I said, the tourism seems to have rebounded, but 2013 will be the first year that BP isn't artificially supporting those tourism dollars. So a lot of people are waiting for the other shoe to drop in terms of if the new people that have started to come to the Gulf because they saw those commercials will continue to come once those dollars available for advertising or other incentives have attracted them to the area.
Right. Well, and in terms of the industry, then the seafood industry, people become wary about seafood coming from that part of the world, and then they start buying from somewhere else. What does it take to get people buying seafood again from that area? And I used to go to Apalachicola and eat oysters all the time, right?
Yeah. No, that's really the question that a lot of these places are facing, is how to get the market share back in a seafood industry Two of our field sites, Apalachicola and Cedar Key. Apalachicola markets oysters, like you said, which are fantastic, and Cedar Key does clams. These are both luxury food items, right? Most people are not eating oysters and clams for dinner. Most people don't know how to prepare them on their own, so it's something that you eat if you go out to a nice seafood restaurant. And like you said, when the spill hit, surveys suggested that 75% of Americans thought that the Gulf was contaminated and any seafood caught from there would hurt them. That turned out to not be the case. There actually haven't been any positive findings of levels of concern in any Gulf-caught seafood. Today, people still, about 33% of Americans believe that the Gulf is contaminated. So these places have lost their market share to international competitors, to China, to Argentina. And if a buyer is now buying cheaper shrimp from someplace else, why do they want to buy more expensive shrimp that's Gulf caught when maybe a third of their customers are going to see that on the menu and say, oh, is this caught from the Gulf of Mexico? I don't want it. That's a big risk for restaurants to take, and so that's a challenge. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that the small independent clam farmer, the small independent oyster distributors are starting to go out of business because you really need to be large in order to survive this type of economic downturn. So the nature of these industries are changing. Cedar Key is a very small island. It's a very resilient place. It's fiercely independent with small individual clam farmers, and they're starting to find that they can't compete with the international market as well as the larger growers that have been able to weather the storm.
And of course, that was something that I heard 7 years ago, pre the BP oil disaster. So I can't imagine how that's really exacerbated it. And you also studied the claims process. So I understand that caused a lot of resentment between people in some of these communities.
Right, the claims process, which if we look at, was clearly BP trying to learn from what happened after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. In that case, it took decades of lawsuits in order to compensate victims of that spill. And even then, they only got a fraction of what they expected. So BP worked very hard and very diligently to get money out faster. And in doing so, they developed a process that wasn't very transparent. And that led to people get different amounts through different processes. If you knew someone in the claims process and you were familiar and comfortable with working with them, you stood a higher chance of getting a $5,000 check. And oftentimes we heard from families where a son would go in with his father, both oystermen in Apalachicola. The son would be first in line, get taken off to one claims processor, get a check for $5,000 for that week of not being able to work, and his dad would get turned down, but they worked in the same boat, they had the same exact paperwork, and when they left, they said, why? Why did this happen?
And it creates a lot of resentment, unfortunately, between people. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time there, but thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about this. It's fascinating stuff.
Great, thank you very much.
And that's our show. To post a comment on any of these stories or to keep up with the latest news, you may visit our website at azpm.org. I'm Georgia Davis. Thanks for watching.